Okay, in the last video we cut down this strip of timber into the right size to fit into these little slots that goes into the what's going to be cut out later for the slider. And so I've cut out the two different widths here. I don't know if you can actually see there we go. So this first section here I trimmed down at the width of the thin section here, which for me was about 6 mils, which is what it's supposed to be. And this next section up along here is a little bit thicker, and so it was cut at about 7.5 or whatever it is that's supposed to fit into those wider blocks. So I've got one narrow cut out and one wider cut out. So I actually cut the wider one first at 7.5, and then I trimmed it down again to the 6. So what we've got to do now is glue these in place. So we'll start with the 6mm ones. Basically, if I just put a bit of glue around the end of this timber here and stick it into the first ones of these grooves. So it doesn't really matter which way we go in there as long as the glue is on all three of those faces. And we'll just stick it into the slot like that. And we'll then need to cut off the excess. So we'll come across to the bandsaw and do that. Now here, just make sure that it doesn't go upwards. We don't want that raised up a long way above the table, so we'll flip it upside down so it's down close to the bottom down here. Just set this up so that can pass. Have to raise that blade guard somewhat so that the piece of timber can fit in underneath there, but we'll cut fairly close to the wood without actually touching it. So that's around about 1 mil away from the wood. Okay, and we'll just carefully cut that off so that we've got a little block inside there. So we're going to do that again for the other ones. I might just get the glue bottle and bring it over here. So it'll be exactly the same. We'll do the other small one. So I'll just put the glue around 3 surfaces of this. Just, it only has to be about 9 mils wide. So a bit of glue on the end like that. Stick it in the other side. Oops, wrong way. Stick it in so the glue's in the bottom of the slot, would be better. Make sure it's well pushed down inside there. And then we'll just do the same, is trim that off. Trying to keep the bit that we're cutting off as low to the table as possible. And just, there's a lot of the blade exposed here, so just keep your fingers well back from it. So that's the second one. And now we've got a little bit of that, the thinner section left over up here, and so I'll just cut that off. Probably doesn't really matter. I suppose I can just put my glue up on the 7mm section up here. So now I'm up to my wide bit, and I'll put a little bit of glue around 3 surfaces on that wide bit. And stick that into one of the wide slots. In this case, I'll just cut off both sides. Okay, so I'll cut off the left and the right side. Just want to make sure that's pushed right into the bottom of the slot. And you probably see I'm cutting away, it's a reasonable way back from the timber. It's not perfectly flush. Those bits sticking out, I'll end up sanding off in a second. So one more. And we'll just stick that into the last slot that we've got there. Okay, so we'll go straight away to the sander and we'll just sand that down so that we can get that flush. So as long as you don't press too hard on the sander, it's not going to come out. I might just wipe off that excess glue so we don't get a heap of glue on the sanding belt. So it won't take much there to bring that down to level. So now we've got a nice level surface. Just don't overdo it. Take your time and... Okay, so that's that. I'll also want to do both ends over here. But it's very lightly sand down the end. Don't take too much off though, because we want to do our final sanding later. Okay, so now we've got a nice section there with the fake bits of timber and the end grain inside there. So that's what we're wanting to see, is the cross grain of the main piece going through the joint and the fake little end grains in between. The last step of this is going to be to cut off the slider and separate it from the rest. But I think we might wait until that dries, because basically we're going to cut along that line, and that line is going to go straight through the joined bit that we've just glued in there. But we're better off waiting a couple hours, or at least an hour or so, until that glue has set. Ideally 3 hours for the glue to dry, because otherwise that little, at the moment, the little block we stuck in there has pressure on it, but if we cut it off, the pressure will be released. So that'll be all for this video. The next one, I don't even know what it is. We'll work that out when we get there.